Star Trek vs. Star Wars: The Imperial War by Darius Trent. Chapter 1: Seemingly Outnumbered. Star Trek vs. Star Wars. The Imperial War. Following the destruction of 3 of the Empire's star destroyers, war has been declared on the United Federation of Planets. Imperial spaceships have already begun to invade and occupy planets and systems surrounding the anomaly from which they emerge from, and these worlds, being small colonies and science outposts, are helpless against the might of the Empire. Worst of all, the evil Darth Vader commands these ships, leading from his superstar destroyer the Executor. But that is the least of the Federation's problems. Following the unexpected arrival of the USS Discovery, Federation internal politics have been too focused on the Discovery and her crew rather than fighting the Imperial Army. The reasons as to the extreme secrecy surrounding the Discovery's disappearance and subsequent cover-up have been unraveled, making people question Starfleet's ability to lead the Federation. In spite of this, Admiral Picard leads a small band of ships in resistance against the Imperials. These ships and their crews, willing to give their lives to stop the Imperial war machine, are the only line of defense in a war where they are seemingly outnumbered every time they fight. Chapter 1: Seemingly Outnumbered. Engagement 3. Battle of the Tiberon System. United Federation of Planets Galactic Empire Class, Galaxy Venture Refit. Ships present: 1 known ships, USS Arizona. Maximum combat speed, warp 9.9. Armament: 14 Type 10 phaser banks, 2 torpedo launchers, 250 photon torpedoes, 50 quantum torpedoes. Weapons firing arcs: forward, aft, starboard, port, dorsal, ventral. Auxiliary craft: 8 shuttlecraft, 1 Danube-class runabout. Class: Imperial 1 ships present, 10 known ships, ISD acclimator. Maximum combat speed: MGLT-60 armament, 75 turbolaser cannons, turret-based, 60 ion cannons. Weapons layout: forward, starboard, port, dorsal. Auxiliary craft: 72 TIE fighters, 8 Lambda-class shuttles, 15 troop transports. Class: Galaxy X ships present, 1 known ships, USS Olympus. Maximum combat speed: warp 9.98 armament, 2 phaser cannons, 15 Type 12 phaser banks, 1 Type 20 spinal lance phaser, 7 torpedo launchers, 200 photon torpedoes, 200 quantum torpedoes. Weapons firing arcs: forward, aft, starboard, port, dorsal, ventral. Auxiliary craft: 4 shuttlecraft, 12 Peregrine-class fighters, 8 Danube-class runabouts. Class: Excelsior refit. Ships present: 1 known ships, USS Okinawa. Maximum combat speed: warp 9.4 armament, 10 Type 10 phaser banks, 6 torpedo launchers, 30 photon torpedoes, 90 quantum torpedoes. Weapons firing arcs: forward, aft, starboard, port, dorsal, ventral. Auxiliary craft: 6 shuttlecraft, 6 shuttle pods. Class: Intrepid. Ships present: 1 known ships, USS Destiny. Maximum combat speed: warp 9.975 armament, 13 Type 10 phaser banks, 4 torpedo launchers, 55 photon torpedoes, 40 quantum torpedoes, 5 tricobalt devices. Weapons firing arcs: forward, aft, starboard, port, dorsal, ventral. Auxiliary craft: 7 shuttlecraft, 2 shuttle pods, 1 Delta-class runabout. The binary stars of the Tiberon system flared brightly into space. The stars, 1 blue and 1 red, had been locked in a near-eternal orbit around each other thanks to the work of gravity. The system had even existed for so long it even had a single M-class planet in orbit of both of them, the planet Tiberon Prime. This planet had for millennia sustained a civilization, the Tiberons, who had been a part of the Federation for more than a century. Its population, however, was about to be forced into a war it never wanted a part in. 10 Imperial 1-star destroyers dropped out of hyperspace a fair distance away from the planet. These star destroyers, part of the massive fleet sent by the Emperor to invade the Federation, has for a few months had free reign over invading the Milky Way galaxy, not only completely taking over the Typhon sector but also invading the Maxia, Sierra and Omicron sectors, so far the extent of their probes had managed to penetrate. Worlds such as Archer IV were invaded and recolonized, their non-human populations forced into slavery and their human populations taken away for scientific experiments. Starbases such as Starbase 75 were left as wrecked husks, the Starfleet crews having evacuated and self-destructed them. The Federation, while abhorring these attacks, were incapable of doing anything to retaliate, as the entirety of Starfleet Command was grounded due to legal issues surrounding the return of the USS Discovery, which was being impounded in Utopia Planitia fleet yards in orbit of Mars. But this fleet was not alone, however. 4 Federation starships dropped out of warp in front of the fleet, the starships Arizona, Olympus, Destiny and Okinawa. These ships, outnumbered 10-4, were Tiberon's only line of defense in this invasion attempt. On the bridge of the ISD Acclamator, Captain Marcus Saxon stood firmly above the trenches that ran either side of him. He had hoped for a posting before the war on the Executor, but being in command of 10 star destroyers was more than enough for him. Yet somehow he felt that this war was wrong somehow. Maybe they were never meant to declare war on the Federation, perhaps never encounter it. Whatever doubts he had in his mind, he had orders from Lord Vader to conquer as much enemy territory as he could, and he intended on doing so. "Captain, we're being hailed by one of their ships," announced an officer at communications, interrupting his thoughts. "Put them on the viewer," ordered Saxon. He turned around to face the viewer to discover the person who had hailed them, Captain Darius Trent, the man who had nearly killed Vader. "This is Captain Darius Trent of the USS Arizona. Disarm your weapons and prepare to be boarded." "This is Captain Marcus Saxon of the ISD Acclamator, and I don't think we will," taunted Saxon, looking down at his fingernails as a sign of disrespectful dominance. "From the looks of it, we have 10 ships, you only 4. We outnumber you more than 2 to 1. I understand you may think yourself superior to us in terms of numbers," continued Trent, "but think how many of you we destroyed at the Battle of the Ivor system. Surely that's enough to give you pause." "No, it isn't," replied Saxon with a smirk, "and even if you destroyed one of my ships, I would have another take its place." "Very well then," ended Trent. "You leave us with no choice." He closed the channel, leaving Saxon to turn back around to his men in the trenches. "Arm the turbolaser batteries and bring us in range of their ships," ordered Saxon. "Have the other ships do the same, and start launching TIE fighters." As the crew bustled below him, Saxon looked up to see what enemies he had before him. The Arizona was there, already distinguishable from the probe which had managed to get back to Imperial space from the Battle of the Ivor system and miraculously without a scratch from the battle now. The other 3 he wasn't so sure of. One looked like the Crazy Horse but bulkier, one looked about half the size of the Arizona, but the other looked very similar to the Arizona, save for a 3rd engine pod at the back and a large cannon on the underside of the ship. That ship faced one of his other vessels, as if it was lining up for a shot of some sort. Before Saxon could say anything regarding that ship, a flash of orange light burst out from the ship, instantly vaporizing the command tower of the Star Destroyer it was facing. It then proceeded to fire multiple blue torpedoes at the now paralyzed Star Destroyer. One shot hitting the exposed reactor bulb at the bottom and causing the ship to explode, sending debris hurling into other Star Destroyers. The other ships then started attacking the fleet, the Arizona firing a single red light, which split off into 8 different torpedoes before hitting the shield generators of the Acclamator and several other Star Destroyers, destroying them. The smaller ships fired several smaller beams at those Star Destroyers, scarring their hulls before firing more of those strange blue torpedoes, destroying more as the battle progressed. "Report," yelled Saxon over the carnage. "We've lost 3 Star Destroyers so far," announced his first officer, struggling to hold onto the wall as the ship shook with the impact of weapons fire. "The remainder have no shields anymore, including us." "Are we in weapons range yet?" angrily asked Saxon. "We're still over 100 km out of optimal turbolaser range," reported the officer at Tactical. "Their weapons range greatly exceeds ours." "Sir, that dreadnought they have is turning to face us," called the first officer as he looked through the windows out into space. "Take emergency evasive action," Saxon ordered, and as his ship slowly tried to get away from the dreadnought, The last thing he saw was a flash of orange light before everything went black. USS Olympus reports they've fired their Lance phaser at the ship Captain Saxon was on. Reported Taytoner from his station at Tactical. Trent looked up at the viewscreen to see the wreckage of Saxon's Star Destroyer, still drifting in the direction it was trying to turn in to get away from the Olympus. There was a continuous hole through the ship, cutting through the main structure of the vessel and straight through the command tower, the entire ship now without lights as Trent knew of the asphyxiation the crew were now suffering from. Nevertheless, he knew that this was a fact of war that he had seen even before this, during the Dominion War and the current conflict Captain Archer was calling the Imperial War. He still wondered why these people, while still human, were predisposed to violence and racism. Indeed, scans of Imperial ships had revealed all human crews, and survivors of invasions had reported the mistreatment of non-humans during invasion. No wonder there's a rebellion going on there, thought Trent as his attention turned back to the battle at hand. Report, ordered Trent. We're still well away from their weapons range, reported Taytoner. We've destroyed 5 of their ships. The remainder are either disabled or attempting to retreat. Sir, we can't let their command get wind of this, commented Aldrin as she turned to face Trent. I recommend we disable the other ships and take their crew in for questioning. Agreed, replied Trent. Order the fleet to fire to disable. Tell Captain Mercer he can stop blowing them all up now. Aye, sir, replied Taytoner. You seem awfully close to Captain Mercer, commented Hawk from her position at the helm. I am, answered Trent. Me, him and Captain Archer on the Destiny have known each other since childhood. Huh, was all Hawk said as she turned back to her console. The Arizona turned to fire at the retreating ship's engines. These ships, already without shields, were helpless as an assortment of phaser beams, phaser pulses and photon torpedoes were fired at their engines, destroying them and leaving them available to capture by the Arizona and its fleet. Taytoner, beam anyone on the bridge of those ships into our brig, ordered Trent. Aye, sir, replied Taytoner before looking at his console strangely. Captain, I'm reading an energy buildup within one of their vessels. That sounds like the buildup to a self-destruct, remarked Aldrin. Detecting more buildups within the other vessels, discovered Taytoner. Explosion is imminent. Beam as many people as you can off their ships, quickly replied Trent. He looked out the viewscreen as Taytoner worked hard at his console. The first ship started to explode, the ship's engine core overloading, consuming the ship in a ball of flame. The remaining Star Destroyers followed suit, immediately exploding one by one as their cores overloaded, sending shockwaves across the immediate area. The Arizona and its fleet, far enough away to avoid being badly damaged, felt the waves very lightly as the ships lightly shook with each wave. Did you manage to get anyone? Asked Trent, his head in his hands. No, sir, the energy buildup prevented a transporter lock, answered Taytoner as he looked grimly down on Captain Trent. Trent let out a sigh and got out of his chair, hailed Tiberon and asked if they're okay. I'm going to report to Enterprise about the battle. Aye, Captain, replied Taytoner. Trent walked to his ready room and went through the doors closing with a hiss behind him. That's the 3rd time we've failed to get any survivors, commented Horan, sitting at his station on the bridge. Well, thanks for reminding us of our failure, snidely replied Hawk. Lieutenant, intervened Aldrin, we all support each other here. Like we supported the command crew of Starbase 75? Angrily shot back Hawk. There was nothing we could do at Starbase 75, replied Aldrin, raising her voice above Hawk's. Commander Charbel and her crew decided it was the most effective means of ensuring the Imperials didn't get their hands on Federation tech. The self-destruct of the base cost them over 50 ships. 50 to over 1,000 others, argued back Hawk. If we had the full Federation fleet we could whip these guys back to their own universe. And that's what we're trying to do while Starfleet tries to get rid of the conspiracies plaguing it currently in court. Do you want me to relieve you of duty? No, sir, answered Hawk. Then this argument is over, ended Aldrin. Now can you please move us into orbit of Tiberon? Yes, sir, replied Hawk. The Arizona and its counterparts moved into orbit of the planet. Behind them, the wreckage of the Star Destroyers burned brightly behind them. The fleet of 10 laid to waste at the hands of a small group of 4 ships. It seemed like another successful engagement for the Federation resistance.